My snobby rich classmate picked me in the prom draft, and the principal demanded I go with him because of his family's influence. I went along with it and attended, but then humiliated him and ruined his reputation. Imagine being picked for prom like a fantasy football draft, except you're not a player, you're the prize. So I go to this small private high school where pretty much everything revolves around money. If your family doesn't drive a luxury car, donate to the school, or fly off to private islands for vacation, you're basically invisible. Every year, prom is a huge deal. Like, people spend months planning it. Parents throw these over-the-top pre-prom parties, and you better believe everyone judges everyone else based on their dates, their dresses, and their arrival cars. This year, things got weird. About a month before prom, I started hearing these whispers about something called the prom draft. At first, I thought it was just some dumb joke or rumor, but then it got louder, and it turned out it was 100% real. Basically, the most popular guys at school were running this secret draft, like fantasy football, where they picked which girls they were going to ask to prom. These dudes were picking girls like we were trading cards. Now, I didn't think this had anything to do with me. I don't really hang out with the popular crowd, and I wasn't expecting to go to prom with any of those guys, but then I found out I'd been drafted, and not just by anyone, by Jason. If you went to my school, you'd know exactly who Jason was. His family is loaded. I'm talking about private jets, designer everything, and a huge mansion. Basically, his family runs the school. They donate so much money that the administration treats them like royalty, and because of that, Jason walks around like he owns the place. He's the kind of guy who thinks he's better than everyone else just because his family has more money than they know what to do with. One day, Mrs. Beckett, our chemistry teacher, had enough of Jason's usual antics. He'd been throwing snide remarks around all class, laughing with his buddies, and completely ignoring her lecture. But that day, Mrs. Beckett snapped. She told Jason to stay after class. Jason rolled his eyes but didn't protest. He stayed behind while everyone else filed out. I wasn't in the mood to stick around, but a group of students hung around the hallway, pretending to shuffle their books slower than usual. Maya nudged me and whispered to me. She asked if I thought something would actually happen this time. We both knew the answer. A few minutes later, the classroom door burst open and Jason stormed out. I didn't catch everything, but I heard Mrs. Beckett say something like, "You're still accountable for your actions." Everyone went silent. Jason turned, glaring at her through the doorway, told her she would regret speaking to him like that, and spat at her before stomping down the hall. The next morning, though, it was like nothing had ever happened. In fact, Mrs. Beckett seemed almost nicer to Jason. He walked into class with his usual swagger, smirking like he hadn't just been chewed out less than 24 hours before. The tension from yesterday was gone. It was completely erased. It didn't take long for the rumors to start. Word was that Jason's parents had a chat with the administration, and more importantly, slipped Mrs. Beckett a generous donation to her favorite charity, which we all knew was herself. A lot of people whispered about it, but no one dared speak too loudly. That afternoon, Jason was back to his old self, sitting at the back of the class, throwing paper wads and making smart remarks under his breath. Mrs. Beckett didn't say a word. She didn't even glance in his direction when he laughed too loud or interrupted her. And now Jason apparently had the first pick in the draft because, of course, he paid for it. Yep, he bribed some of the guys running it to get the first pick. And guess who he picked? Me. And I don't mean that in a good way. Jason didn't choose me because he liked me or thought we'd have fun together. He picked me because, in his eyes, I was a trophy. I guess I was hot enough for him to show off at prom. Most of the other girls threw themselves at Jason while I knew what he was and didn't pay him any attention in class. I never laughed at his jokes or did so much as to offer a pencil when he needed it. And that's what he loved about me. He loved the chase. And trust me, I knew this wasn't about personality. Jason had never spoken more than 5 words to me before this. Jason was like any typical rich, snobby kid. He showed up to school in his fancy car, wearing clothes that probably cost more than my rent. He's the guy who casually mentions his family's vacations to private islands and brags about how his parents donate to the school like he's doing everyone a favor. When he found out I wasn't thrilled about being his pick, he didn't take it well. Jason started acting like I owed him a prom date just because he chose me in this ridiculous draft. He'd find ways to bump into me in the hallways and make comments like, "I can't wait to see you in your dress," or, "You know we'll look amazing together at prom." I tried to avoid him, but Jason made it impossible. He'd corner me after class, and even if I tried to say I wasn't interested, he'd just laugh it off like I was joking. He was treating me like I was already his date. It was like, in his mind, I didn't have a choice. Here's where it gets even worse. It wasn't just Jason pressuring me. The school started getting involved. One day I got called into the principal's office. I figured it was about something important, maybe a school project or something, but nope. The principal sits me down and, in this super serious tone, starts talking about how I should consider going to prom with Jason. She doesn't come right out and say it, but she basically hints that his family wants to keep Jason happy, and this is how they plan to do it. I knew that she was only saying that so his family could continue paying them off, but I still couldn't believe what I was hearing. Since when is it my responsibility to make sure some spoiled rich kid has a good prom night? After that meeting with the principal, a couple of my teachers started weighing in too. One day, in the middle of class, my history teacher made this casual comment about how it would be such an honor for any girl to go to prom with Jason, given how much his family does for the school. I just sat there in shock. My friends tried to be supportive, but they even started to say I should just go with Jason to avoid the drama. It's just one night, they kept saying. What's the big deal? The only people who weren't thrilled about Jason picking me for prom were the girls in his circle. They had their own table in the cafeteria, dead center, where they always sat with perfect posture like they were posing for some magazine cover. They were the ones who wore custom uniforms, somehow managing to skirt the dress code while flaunting their designer handbags and jewelry. Ever since Jason drafted me, they had been shooting me dirty looks every time I passed by. It was subtle at first, but as prom got closer, their stares got harder to ignore. Every day at lunch, they'd huddle together at their table, whispering and laughing. I'd catch them glancing in my direction. One of them, Tessa, had this mean little smirk she'd flash every time our eyes met, like she knew something I didn't. The second I looked back, though, they'd all spin around and act like nothing had happened, as if their whispers weren't just about me. It was infuriating. I'd sit down at my table and feel their eyes burning into the back of my head, knowing they were probably tearing me apart. Sometimes I'd hear bits and pieces of what they were saying. They didn't say it to my face, of course. They'd never do that. They preferred to make me feel like an outsider, like I didn't belong in Jason's world. Even though my friends said it didn't make a difference, it was a big deal to me. I didn't want to be forced into going to prom with someone I barely knew, let alone someone who was treating me like a prize he'd won in some game. And yet, the pressure kept building. It was like the entire school was on Jason's side, and I was the one being difficult for not just going along with it. Before all of this, I'd never been the kind of girl to care too much about how I looked. I wore the same uniform as everyone else, a simple plaid skirt, white blouse, and blazer. But for some reason, it was like I couldn't walk down the hall without getting called out. It happened almost daily. "Fix your blouse," one teacher would say, and look at me disapprovingly as if I'd altered my uniform to make it more revealing, but I hadn't done anything. It was the same shirt that every other girl in the school wore, but when I wore it, somehow it was a problem. One day, Mrs. Turner, who never said a word to any of the other girls, pulled me aside as I headed to class and told me that my skirt was getting a bit short and looked me up and down. I looked at her, confused. My skirt was the exact same length it had been since I started school here. They made it seem like the way I wore the uniform always broke the dress code, even when it was perfectly fine on everyone else. I didn't try to stand out, but somehow I always did. I don't want to sound like a pick-me when I say this, but even at parties, it was the same story. I'd step in, and suddenly, eyes were on me. I didn't ask for it, but the whispers would start almost immediately. Guys would nudge each other, while girls would size me up the second I walked into the room. Sometimes I just wanted to disappear. That's why Jason picking me for prom was the ultimate insult to the girls in his circle who had been waiting for a chance to get with him. They hated it. After weeks of pressure from Jason, the school, and even my parents, who didn't want me to cause any trouble with the school, I caved. I wish I could say I stood up for myself and told Jason to go to prom alone, but I didn't. I gave in. The school held a special pre-prom event, which was a ceremony dedicated to the biggest donors and the students they were sending off in style. It was ridiculous, but mandatory. The entire gym was decorated with banners and lights as if it were already prom night. Parents, staff, and students sat around round tables covered in white linens, while the principal stood on stage, mic in hand, smiling like she was hosting a game show. As the event neared its end, Mrs. Hudson's smile grew wider. "And of course, we couldn't have this night without a special thanks to the Winters family," she said, gesturing toward Jason's parents, who sat near the front with smug expressions on their faces. "Their generosity knows no bounds, and we're so grateful for all they've done for this school," she said. Applause erupted. This was it. This was the moment it became official. "And as you all know," Mrs. Hudson continued, "Jason Winters will be attending prom with one of our most exceptional students." She paused, and every head in the room turned toward me. "Let's give them a round of applause." Everyone clapped, their eyes fixed on me. Jason was grinning like a Cheshire cat, basking in the attention, like he'd just won the grand prize. I felt sick. After the event, as we were all filing out of the gym, Jason caught up to me and asked if I was ready for prom. He leaned in too close for comfort. I tried to brush him off, but he wasn't letting up. His voice dropped, just loud enough for me to hear. He then said that I was his for the night, and everyone knew it. He smirked. I didn't want to imagine what he meant. I couldn't shake how disgusting it felt, how trapped I was. The school, the teachers, and my own parents had all pushed me into this corner, and now Jason was boasting about it, claiming ownership over a night I wanted no part of. I went home that night with his words still rattling around in my head. So prom night finally rolls around, and Jason picks me up in his flashy car. Of course, we have to take a million pictures in front of his mansion before we even head to the dance. His parents are there, all proud, making sure the photographers capture us in front of their ridiculous fountain and expensive art collection. It was clear from the start that this night was all about showing off. We get to prom, and things only go downhill from there. Jason wouldn't let me out of his sight for more than 2 minutes. Every time I tried to talk to my friends or get a drink, he'd pull me back and make some comment like, "Remember, you're with me tonight." It felt like I was his accessory, not his date. At one point, I overheard Jason talking to his friends, bragging about how much he paid to get the first first pick in the draft. He literally said, "Man, I paid good money for this," and he wasn't even trying to whisper. The whole night was a nightmare. Jason kept dragging me around the dance floor, showing me off to his friends like I was some kind of trophy. And the worst part? No one seemed to care. It was like everyone expected me to just go along with it. The girls in his circle were there too, huddled together, staring at me, wishing they were in my position while I tried everything to get out of it. During one of the slow dances, Jason made another one of his gross comments about how he owned me for the night, and I just couldn't take it anymore. I stepped back, right there in the middle of the dance floor, and told him off. I don't remember exactly what I said. All I saw was red, but the looks on everyone's faces were enough to know I'd struck a nerve. The music paused for a second, and people were staring, but I didn't care anymore. I was done. I grabbed my purse, stormed out of the dance, and called a ride home. I didn't even look back to see Jason's reaction. I just wanted to get out of there. Monday rolls around, and of course, everyone's talking about what happened. Jason's parents were furious and tried to stir up trouble with the school, but honestly, I didn't care anymore. I went to the principal's office and filed a complaint against Jason for how he treated me. I didn't expect much to come of it, but I needed to stand up for myself, even if the administration was still trying to protect Jason's family's reputation. Surprisingly, some of the teachers who had pressured me into going with Jason actually admitted they were wrong. I guess word spread fast about how controlling Jason had been, and suddenly, people were starting to realize how messed up the whole situation was. As for Jason, he didn't apologize. He spent the next few weeks sulking around school, complaining to anyone who would listen about how I ruined his prom night. But here's the thing, Jason's social status started to crumble. People were finally seeing him for what he really was, an entitled, spoiled brat who thought his money could buy anything, even people. And while his family still had their grip on the school, Jason wasn't as untouchable as he used to be.